everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad, Gustafson, and I share two books that we love and we think you should read. When, Brad?
Right now. That, I don't know if it looks as good as it feels, but I feel like I've got some rhythm going on here, Jen.
I love it. Hey, listen, anytime you feel like dancing, I am all for it. So you go for it, my friend.
Oh, it's always like when I'm at home dancing and the kids are like, that's terrible. And I think it's pretty good. And then I see myself in the reflection and I'm like, yeah, that's probably not as good as I thought it was.
No, their job is to tell you everything you do is wrong. So don't you listen to that. So how are you? What you been reading this week?
I am so good, partly because I just had a lovely conversation with you before this started. My bucket is full. But I am hugging a book right now that I read and I fell in love with. And I think I can vouch for anyone who is like preschool to eighth grade, like teacher, principal.
Gotcha.
And above and beyond that, I think people would like it, but I'm just going to stick to like my hardcore wheelhouse here. So not even with kids, although you could read this to a class or a school. I read this and at first blush, I looked at the cover. Norman didn't do it. And I didn't think, it just kind of looked like a lot of books I've ever seen. And I'm not knocking the cover, but I read it and I was gushing. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So this is a story of a porcupine who is best friends with a tree. And the tree is legit just an inanimate object in the whole thing, which is part of the humor. Because the porcupine is bonding with this tree.
Yes.
Like, I don't even know how, it's just a wonderfully imaginative story, but somehow the author, Ryan T. Higgins, makes it where they really are friends, even though the tree is just sitting there. But like the porcupine, someday they'll play tree together. So the porcupine, I mean, that's how they play tree, right? But then controversy and drama, a sapling or a seed or another tree sprouts up near the tree. So of course that infringes on the relationship and porcupine is threatened, and gradually as this other tree is growing, it's getting closer and closer to porcupine's best friend who he used to bond with. So there's turmoil in the forest, and porcupine, and this is where the title comes from, Norman didn't do it, yes he did. Porcupine digs up this other tree, takes it on a rowboat ride halfway around the world, replants it somewhere so he could have his tree to himself, his friend, his best friend to himself. Eventually, I promise I won't give away the ending, but I got to keep going a little bit further. Eventually, Norman's conscience wears on him, and he's like, he goes and gets the tree, transplants it back, and then all kinds of other things happen that are surprising and awesome and unexpected and funny. And it's literally, I'm just going to call it a hardcore home run or grand slam. It's a lovely, 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 enjoyable story with an unexpected ending. You won't be able to predict the ending. And it's so worth it. I said read it for yourself, like if you're an educator, but your kids would love this too. They really would love it. So Ryan T. Higgins, hats off to you. Norman didn't do it. Yes, he did.
You had me at Ryan T. Higgins. I have never read a book by Ryan T. Higgins that I didn't love and think was hilarious. I'm struggling to remember the titles now, but he did a series of books a few years back that were about this bear named Bruce, who somehow becomes the adoptive mother of this group of ducklings. And that book is so funny for adults and for kids. I remember reading it to, like a group of second graders who could not, if they'd been sitting on chairs, they would have all fallen off, who just could not stop falling over with laughter. It is so funny. I just think he has got a real gift for creating these sweet books with just a sweet, gentle meaning, but that are also hilarious.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and pun intended. I am going to guess that this is like one of his best, if not the best. I haven't read all the Bruce books or all the Classmates books, some of them, but this one is so good. And I'm the type of person, this is terrible. Either you love us or you hate us. Like when we buy a gift or have a surprise, we just are like, I got to tell you. So Hope, my daughter, and I, anytime there's a surprise, it just eats away. And I can hold it in a couple hours, but I'm like, Hope, you're not going to believe this. And then, then we celebrate and we love each other. But the ending, I'm holding back, and I'm not going to break the surprise, but it is so ridiculously good. There's no way an ending to a book could be as good as the ending in this book. Okay.
Oh my gosh, that is a bold statement
I
right
know.
there. I love it. I love it. I hope Ryan T. Higgins hears this because I'm sure he will think that is delightful. I love that so much. That's awesome. And I love his book, so that's great.
All
Well,
right,
I have a
Jen, what do you
picture book.
got? What do you got?
I have a picture book as well to this week, but it's very, very different from the one that you shared. In so much as I think this is a really good example of how I think younger kids would get a lot out of this book, but I honestly kept thinking about how I might use it with upper elementary, middle, and even high school kids, because I think there's just a lot of meat on the bone to be used it for just a variety of different things, just for conversation starters, but also there's a lot of writing prompts in there, etc. So I'm going to share. This is one of those, I'm breaking my own rule where I'm sharing a book before it's released. You know how I don't often do that, but I'm really excited about this one. I don't want to forget to share it. And then also, I just want people to get it on their pre-order list because it's just so, so good. Which is actually ironic because that's the title. It's called Something Good. And I don't know about you, Brad, but I find Corinna Luyken, who is the illustrator of this book, I find her art so recognizable. Like I can just pick it out. You don't even have to tell me who the artist is. I know that that's Corinna Luyken. Like that is just sort of quintessentially her art. The author is Marcy Campbell. And before I get into what the book is about, and I'll share that in just a few minutes, I wanted to share the whole like sort of back and front spread because it kind of gives you a clue as to what's going to happen next. Plus, it's so beautiful. And Corinna often does this thing where she uses one central color, like there's a color in her books that is at the heart of it, like is the central. Not that there aren't others, but you kind of like thematically, she creates things with color. And I don't know if you can see, you can kind of see the paint buckets at the back there, right?
Yep.
And then now maybe you'll notice that some of the kids are holding paintbrushes and rollers, etc. But I want to take the dust jacket off to reveal, mostly because it'll be easier to read, but also because we can see that in this book, the case cover is a little bit different. We see those paint buckets and kids are painting, but we start to kind of see what they're creating. You've got a ladder, you've got a tree, you've got sun, and then the same thing, it goes on to this side. You can see how they're using the paint, you know, to create this whole different world. Now, what I'm going to do, rather than explain this book, I want to read the first few pages to you because that'll give you the synopsis of what it's about, okay? And I also wanted to show the liner pages because they're very different from the cover, but I'll see if you can recognize what they are after I get started, okay? So I'll give you that. This is sort of a preview. So the older kids, I would say, keep this image in mind. And when you know what it is, maybe sit on your hands or something, you know, so you know, right? You know. So I'll start by reading the first few pages. It says, the day the custodian found the bad something on the bathroom wall, all the girls from Mr. Gilbert's class were called into the principal's office. And you can see the line, it begins. There they are waiting to see Mrs. Gilbert. There she is, her office right there, okay? And then it goes on the next page. The principal asked if we had any information. Some girls said, no, Mrs. Martinez. Some girls stared down at the carpet. Mrs. Martinez took her time looking at each of us. She seemed very serious and very sad. She said quietly but firmly, this kind of thing won't be tolerated at our school. We all started fidgeting. We wanted to know, what is the bad something? Who did it? And what will happen next? You can kind of see all the kids. And I really responded to this little kid over here with their hands folded. I feel like that's what I would be doing if I were in the principal's office. But also there's some like looks of expectation. A lot of them have questions about what's going on. The principal said no one was allowed to use that bathroom. But after lunch, Kyoko made a run for it, and me, and Tanisha and Emmy were right behind her. We giggled our way in and shut the door, then shushed each other as we looked around, over and under and on, until we saw it. You see them, they're in the bathroom and they're looking for the bad thing. The bad something. My mouth popped open. Tanisha turned around and ran out. Kyoko kicked a stall really hard, and the sound made us cover our ears. Emmy started to cry. And that's all I'm going to read, because we don't ever know exactly what the bad thing is, but then we start to focus on how, as a school, we can fix it. Now, I want to read just a little bit from the author's note at the end, because that'll give you a clue as to how they fix it, okay? And if you were looking at the cover and you could see what the kids were doing with paint, etc., that gives us a clue as to what they might do to fix it. Something good was inspired by real life events at my children's school. In one case, I knew what the bad something was. In another, I never found out. I witnessed, as both a parent and a classroom volunteer, the wide range of children's reactions to these troubling events. And I know that just as there are varied reactions, there are also varied solutions. This book portrays just one way that a school might deal with an incident of hate speech. So this is Something Good, and how this school community uses, and this kind of plays into our conversation from before the show, uses something bad as an opportunity to build something good together. It's by Marcy Campbell and Corinna Luyken. And while you can't read it right now, I definitely think you should pre-order it right now.
I sense a new hashtag. Pre-order this now. That's good. Thanks, Jen.
Yes.
Powerful. The color, the use of color, and just the way that the illustrations are facing and all that. Very cool and powerful. Awesome.
Well, and I know, as somebody who is an artist yourself, I kept thinking about you as I was reading it, because I just really like the way sometimes when something like that happens in our communities or in our schools, you can feel super helpless, like, you know, especially if you don't know who did it. Like, you don't know, who it is. And even if you do, maybe you don't feel empowered to be able to have a conversation with that person, or you just feel like how suddenly what you thought to be true about your community and the people in it feels untrue. It can make things feel fragile and insecure, like it can spark fear, I think, especially for kids who see school as a safe place, and then maybe suddenly it isn't, And so I liked the way that the book flips that to be an empowering thing. Like, this is an opportunity for us to come together and do something good. So let's do that. And I won't spoil the whole story, but the way that sort of spills out and it like sort of unweaves itself is really beautiful. I think they did a great job. So
that's
anyway.
really appreciate the share. So well explained. It just feels important, magical, all the things. So I don't want to step on your toes, but I do need to up my dust jacket game, because my goodness, I just have to show you, because I didn't even think to do that. So this is Norman on the midnight run. I love it. I think to go get the tree back that he had ditched or transplanted. And you made me think of that. I'm like, I got to take a look. And sure enough, every once in a while, there's a really lovely surprise. And I would consider that a really lovely surprise. So.
I love it. You know what? Today's show really reminds me of how, like, the power of picture books in very different ways. Like the two picture books that we share today, different audiences, different styles, really different I don't know, sort of like roles that they might play in terms of the relationship between a young reader and an adult who might be sharing it with them. But both super powerful and have the capacity to imprint on your heart. I love that.
Yes, 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 yes,
yes. I love it. Okay, so if our 3.5 viewers would like to check out other potential Heartprint books, where can they go?
Yeah, I would definitely go to bit.ly/read_this_now, and you will see a plethora of picture books and some other alliteration for young adult novels, something that starts with Y, I don't know.
Some books from across the spectrum to appeal
Yes.
to any reader, right?
Yeah.
I love
Thank
it.
you,
All
Jenn.
right. Well, thank you, my friend. And thank you to everyone watching. We appreciate you. Have a good week. We will see you then. Happy reading.